Good morning, dear students. In this video, I will continue with Act 4, Scene 1. In the previous video, I had stopped at a point in the story where Graciano had abused Shylock in court, stating that he should have been condemned and sent to hell. He had gone on to show his disrespect towards Shylock, calling him an inexorable dog. He had then raised questions regarding the efficiency of the judiciary and the court, stating that Shylock should have been put to death long time ago, and he was still alive and living among the innocent Venetian citizens, preying on them, and the law and the judiciary should be blamed and held responsible for allowing him to be still alive. Then he had gone on to say that his behavior, Shylock's wicked, malicious behavior, was causing him to doubt his own Christian faith, shaking him in his own belief of his religious principles, and forcing him to believe in the theory of the soul by Pythagoras. He said that he was now tending to believe, he was now more inclined to believe and agree with Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician and a philosopher, on his theory of the soul. You remember that, and he had gone on to say that when Shylock was still in the womb of his mother, the soul of the cruel, wicked, bloodthirsty, violent wolf that had been put to death by hanging at the gallows for having murdered, I would use the word, for having slaughtered, preyed upon, and killing innocent human beings. The soul, as soon as the wolf had died, the soul escaped its cruel body and right from the gallows found an entry into Shylock's body while he was still in the womb of his unholy mother. That is why his desires were wolfish, bloody, starved, and ravenous. So that is where, if you recall, I had stopped. If you have not followed the previous video, do kindly go back and refer to it. This was also done during the online class. And now let us continue with this scene. After which, if you remember from the previous video, Shylock very calmly, he shunned Graciano, acting absolutely indifferent, trying to disregard his presence and comment. And what had he said to him? He could simply carry on abusing him. And by doing so, he was not going to cause any sort of difference in nullifying or removing the seal from the agreement or the contract. He had gone on to say that by shouting at the top of his voice, abusing him, he was simply or merely hurting his own lungs. And if you remember, he had gone on to taunt and tease and anger and frustrate Graciano, calling him good youth sarcastically, trying to poke fun at him. And he said that he should come to his senses or he would cause himself great damage. He would destroy himself and he would cause harm to his ability to think and behave like a gentleman. And he would cause so much of damage that it would be beyond his capacity or capability to redeem himself. It would be beyond his redemption. So he must take care of himself and his behavior. And then he had gone on to say that there he was present in court and he was there to get justice. And he was expecting that the court and the law grant him or deliver justice to him. The Duke, in reply to what he had said next. Kindly follow your text. The Duke said, this letter from Bellario doth commend a young and learned doctor to our court. He had read the letter that he had received, and he said the letter had recommended a young and very highly qualified expert at law to the court to help him and the court to make a decision in this particular case. Commend means had highly recommended, and the letter had come from Bellario. Bellario had recommended a young and very highly qualified expert lawyer to come and be allowed to participate in the case so as to assist and help them to make a decision. Nerissa, when the Duke had asked, where is he? Where is he meaning? Where was this young and learned doctor whom Bellario had highly recommended in the letter which he had sent to the Duke? He questioned to know where was this young lawyer. And Nerissa answered immediately, he attendeth here hard by to know your answer, whether you'll admit him. Nerissa replied to the Duke and said that the person who Bellario had recommended, he was present outside the court waiting very close to the courtroom and waiting eagerly to know the Duke's decision and whether he would permit him to allow him come into the courtroom and participate in the court case or the hearing or the court proceeding. The Duke then replied, with all my heart, some 3 or 4 of you go give him courteous conduct to this place. Meantime, the court shall hear Bellario's letter. So what did the Duke say immediately? That with all his heart, he was absolutely ready to welcome him with all his heart. He had no objections against not allowing him to come to court. He was very much ready to accept him and permit him to come and participate in the court proceedings on that day. And he asked some of the attendants, some 3 or 4 of the attendants who were waiting at the doorway to kindly go out, and with utmost politeness, gentleness and honor, which was the usual way of welcoming guests in Venice in those days, following all courtesy and all etiquette, lead him into the courtroom, showing all honor and respect. And meanwhile, the court, he permitted the court to listen to what was mentioned in the letter which he had received from Bellario. Bellario was the eminent lawyer who lived in Padua, for whom the Duke had sent and had asked him for his help to guide him and assist him to come up with a suitable verdict or a decision in this particular case. So, what did the letter contain? The clerk was handed the letter and was asked to read. The clerk began to read the letter, and this is what the letter contained. Kindly follow your text. Now, before I move on to discuss what was mentioned in the letter, kindly know these terms, because we are discussing and dealing with a court case. Some technical terms you should know, such as plaintiff, Plaintiff, plaintiff. In legal technical term, this term or this word is used for a person who brings the case or a charge against another in court. So a person who brings a charge or a case against another in court is called a plaintiff. 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 So who is the plaintiff here? Shylock is the plaintiff here, because he has brought the case against Antonio here in court. Now there is the next term that you need to know, and the term is defendant. D-E-F-E-N-D-A-N-T, defendant. And who is the defendant in this case, in the play? Antonio, because he is defending himself to prove himself innocent against the case that Shylock had filed. There is the other word that you will have to know, and that is arraign. A-R-R-A-I-G-N. Arraign. Arraign meaning, again I repeat the spelling, A-R-R-A-I-G-N. Arraign meaning to call or bring someone before a court to answer a criminal charge. So who was arraigned in this case? Antonio was arraigned in this case. He was summoned to come to court and stand trial for having failed to pay back according to the terms and conditions mentioned in the contract which he had signed at the time of borrowing 3,000 ducats from Shylock. So, now coming back to the letter, and remember there is a term called lawsuit. Lawsuit is the charge or the case against a person. Okay, so who had filed this lawsuit? Against whom? Shylock had filed this lawsuit against Antonio. Now, coming back to the letter. The letter read, "Your Grace shall understand that at the receipt of your letter, I am very sick. But in the instant that your messenger came, in loving visitation was with me a young doctor of Rome. His name is Balthazar. I acquainted him with the cause in controversy between the Jew and Antonio the merchant. We turned over many books together. He is furnished with my opinion, which bettered with his own learning and the greatness whereof I cannot enough commend, comes with him at my importunity to fill up your grace's request in my stead. I beseech you, let his lack of years be no impediment to let him lack a reverend estimation. For I never knew so young a body with so old a head. I leave him to your gracious acceptance, whose trial shall better publish his commendation. Now what it all means in simple language is, this eminent lawyer Bellario had sent a message to the Duke, and this is what he had stated in the letter, that he wished to inform His Grace the Duke, who was the judge in the case, that at the time when he, Bellario, had received his letter, the Duke's letter, requesting him to come to assist him in that particular case of Antonio and Shylock against Antonio. At that time he was very sick, but at the very moment, at that very time when the messenger had come to deliver the letter to him, a young doctor of laws belonging to Rome, coming from Rome, was with him or happened to be with him in his house, and his name was Balthazar. And he had come, this young lawyer had come to meet him as a good friend and a lawyer. So this particular lawyer that he was talking about, this young lawyer, had come to meet him on a friendly visit as a good friend, and he was there at that very moment when the messenger had come to deliver his letter. So he mentioned next that he, on receiving the letter and reading it, he had shared with this young lawyer who had come to visit him from Rome. He had told him regarding the cause or the reason of the dispute or the disagreement between the Jew Shylock and Antonio the merchant. He had acquainted him with the cause of the difference between the dispute between the disagreement between Shylock, the moneylender, and Antonio the merchant. And after having shared with him the reason or the cause of the difference in the case between the two, together, Bellario said, mentioning next in the letter, that together with the young lawyer who had come to visit him as a friend from Rome, together they had consulted or studied or had gone through, referred to many law books. For what purpose? To find a suitable solution to the case. And that after having referred or studied or having gone through many of those law books, Bellario Bellario said that he had shared or told him what he thought regarding the case. He had shared his views and opinions regarding the case with the young lawyer. And the young lawyer, having heard his opinions and his views on the case, he then had gone on to analyze the entire case, study it in detail, and he went on to add his own expert views to it further and in more depth, using his own expert knowledge, using his high learning, and he then went on to praise, stating that his knowledge and his learning was of very high quality, and to praise his talent and high qualities as a lawyer. Bellario mentioned that he had no words, or he did not have enough words to praise his very high qualities and expert knowledge which this young lawyer had. He said that he had no words, or he lacked words to praise how good and how high the qualities he possessed as a lawyer. Then he had gone on to say that he was coming to the court, to the Duke, at his special request, and he was coming to take his place, substitute him on his behalf at his special request, because he was sick, so he would not be able to come, and that is why he was sending this young lawyer. And he would not have come if Bellario had not requested him. So he mentioned next, he was coming to the court, to the Duke at his special request, to take his place, substitute him on his behalf, and he would thus fulfill and meet the needs of the court and participate in the case if the Duke would allow him to do so. Then he had gone on to mention that requesting the Duke, he prayed to the Duke not to allow or let his youthful young appearance come in the way or stand in the way of him, of this young lawyer, receiving respectful, worthy consideration from the Duke, who was the judge in the case, as well as his court. He mentioned again, I repeat, he requested, he entreated to the Duke, who was the judge in the case, that this young lawyer who he was sending be accepted with all honor by him and his court, and not to judge him to be immature or incapable based on his young age, that his young age should not act as a blockade, should not act as a barrier, should not come in the way of him being treated respectfully, with all respect and honor, and be allowed to be considered to participate in the case by the Duke and the court. I hope you understand what I am meaning to say. So the word importunity, meaning gentlemen, he was making this earnest request not to take his young age as a cause of him being immature and not allow him to take part in the court case. Instead, they should disregard his young age and give him that due respect which he deserved based on the high qualities which he possessed as a lawyer. Disregard his young age and appearance and allow him with due respect, with all honor and respect, to take part in the court case. And that was the recommendation which he had sent. Then he had gone on to say, mentioning next that he was coming in his place on his behalf, substituting him, and he would perform the same function which the Duke was or had been expecting from Bellario. I beseech you, let his lack of years be no impediment, should not be a barrier, should not act as a barrier, an obstacle in the way of him being received with all honor and respect and consideration by the Duke and his court. Next, he had gone on to say that I never knew so young a body with so old a head. I leave him to your gracious acceptance, whose trial shall better publish his commendation. Meaning to say that Bellario had mentioned in the letter next that he had never known or seen anyone or any man so young in age, yet so mature in his intelligence and abilities as an expert. And then he had gone on to say that he was sending him to be received by the Duke as the judge in the case, and his performance at the court during the trial would prove his high qualities as a lawyer, would prove his abilities as a lawyer, which Bellario was approving of, which Bellario was attesting and standing as a guarantor of to the Duke and the court and to all others present in court. And he had gone on to say that indeed his qualities as a lawyer was absolutely praiseworthy and something to admire and reckon with. So that is what he had gone on to say. I repeat, he said that he was sending him to be received by the Duke, who was the judge in the case, and his performance, the young lawyer's performance at the Duke's court during the trial would prove his high qualities as a lawyer. Then he had gone on to say next that he was approving of the young lawyer's high qualities to the Duke and the court. He went on to say that his actions would prove his worth more than the words of praise and recommendation which he was sending for this young lawyer mentioned in that letter. So again I repeat, he said, mentioned there in the letter that his actions, the young lawyer's actions, would prove his worth more than the words of recommendation which he was sending to the Duke and the court through that letter. So, gentlemen, then the Duke spoke next and said, "You hear the learned Bellario, what he writes, and here I take it is the doctor come." So the Duke said to the court and everybody present there, the jury especially, that they were at that point of time, they should have been clear on what the letter contained, and there was nothing that he was hiding, because he had handed the letter to the clerk to read it. And he said, since the expert Bellario could not come as he was sick, he was sending in his place a young lawyer from Rome, who should be accepted by the court with all customary honor and respect, and his young age should not be considered as a cause to disqualify him and stop him from participating in the case. And here he said, I take it, and there he said, seeing the young man walk in, he said that he was considering that this person who had just walked in was the same very highly recommended doctor who Bellario had sent in his place, in his stead. So, gentlemen, next entered Portia, dressed like a doctor of laws. And that is where we had stopped. So in this short video, I will stop there. And once we carry on in the online classes, I will, after having finished a portion of it in the online classes, I will make the same video. I have sent you the notes till this point. Go through the notes. Please attend your classes. Send in your doubts, and if you have any problems, I will be most glad to solve them. So please go through the video, refer to it, and learn. Thank you, gentlemen.